evaluation, and that mental health team has nothing to do with the forensic evaluation that will occur later on for the case, but those aren't linked. But yeah, we're interested and anxious for them to tell us about his status and ability to house him alone. Another concern of ours, of course, is when you're housing someone without people around, other inmates, it's oftentimes the temptation for harming themselves. And so that'll be a 15-minute observation from medical and mental health staff, and then you got correction staff living in that environment constantly as well. And so we expect it to be more than 15 minutes. That's the minimum.
Sheriff,
yes.
If you read the reports, the police reports from Illinois, it doesn't seem to cost very much. He can be argumentative, belligerent. What's his demeanor been like? Has he said anything?
Yes, we've had zero problems with him. Clearly, we've asked and directed him for certain things he needs to do. I would expect him to get used to our rules and our procedures over the next few days. It's brand new, of course, to him, but he's been compliant. He's been communicating at least with the medical staff and mental health staff, and we've seen no resistance so far.
Have you worried that he's genuinely suicidal?
Yes, any case like this, I say that because I would say that no matter what we knew about him, we've read and heard some of the issues that you guys have talked about, I'm sure. We should be worried. We want his day in court. The community deserves that. And one of the challenges is when someone wants to harm themselves, of course, we have to be on alert because that is a difficult thing to manage. And so not only the first 72 hours, but thereafter. So I would expect the significant nature of this case puts him at the high rate for sure.
One more question. His $2 million bail was revoked. Did you get an explanation for why the bail was revoked?
I know a little bit about that, so I will tell you what I understand. I think the judge made that determination this morning. A lot of people were confused, though, that it has to be deemed a capital case before you could have no bond, and I'm not a lawyer, but that's one of the hang-ups. But I understand now that bond has been revoked until they can see him.
What was their explanation for that?
I have not. I know he has a hearing in the morning in front of that same judge, and I think that'll be cleared up surely by 11 o'clock. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, you've been outspoken about mental health and how that's dealt with in the justice system in the past. If this proves to be another case where that was a factor, are you disheartened? What is your emotion tell you about that?
Yeah, let me be very clear. This individual would never have been eligible based on the crime for any diversion of the program that we're trying to create. But I have to tell you, it is evidence that we have too many guns and too many mentally ill people. And when you put those two things together in our community, the potential for things like this is going to exist. And my hope is that we can find a way to reach people who are today suffering from mental illness that we could help instead of one of these days having another one of these types of cases.
Are you frustrated that lawmakers at all levels, public officials at all levels seem to pass the buck a little bit on that? It's a tough decision, and somebody's got to make it, I suppose.
Yeah, I've been critical the last couple of days because I don't like people who jump out when something like this happens. We need to deal with the victims and the families in the case, and I don't want to be hypocritical about that. But I will say I have been venting and frustrated about the fact that the criminal justice system cannot solve the mental health problem. We as these facilities right here, take Mr. Ranking out of here, 40% of these people don't belong here. They're here because there's no other mental health institution for them to be in, and the criminal justice system, in often every case, has had some contact with individuals that we could have done something about it earlier. My hope is that the next generation doesn't have to deal with this, that mental health can be treated as a mental issue or a health issue instead of hidden in jails and prisons.
Sheriff, can you talk about this vest thing over here? What is it, and how often is he wearing it, and why?
Yeah, it's that's what you would call it suicide prevention. We try not to use that word. It's medical observation today. That's what he wears so he can't harm himself and he's not completely without clothing. I can just tell you over the years there's been a lot of different inventions that were to help that, and you could make ropes out of certain things. This thing is almost foolproof, and it's a way to keep some privacy but not allow them to harm themselves.
So he's wearing no other clothes except for that
right.
sheet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So Ryan King is effectively on suicide watch?
We don't use that word anymore, but that would be appropriate. Medical observation is the reason he's in there is we're observing him for those risks, but it's a medical, and we listen, just so you understand, we want all housing decisions like that to be made by the mental health staff. That's the experts. They're telling us where he can be housed. Clearly, he has very limited places he can go. He will never remove himself from what is maximum custody. So,
how concerned are you that it seems like Ryan King has slipped through the cracks and may not have ever needed to have a gun in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know enough about all the details on that side. I'm frustrated because my community has been victimized again by a situation, and I hope as we move forward the conversation can really get down to what can we do about things going in this community and others, and the combination of significant number of people in the streets and significant guns that are both and also mentally ill are too common of a factor in most of these cases.
Has he spoken at all about what happened here?
No, we haven't heard anything directly about the case, and I'm sure as we move forward, some of that will come out in the court tomorrow as well. Yes,
sir. You grew up here.
Yes.
You're running through your fifth term. So you're protecting your community where you was right? You're invested in this place. So in a context like this crime and its impact on community and
yeah, you know, I grew up down the road from there. I eat at Waffle House today. I eat there probably, it's not the advertisement, probably 5 or 6 times a month. I have a 23-year-old son. He could be at Waffle House. He deserves to go to Waffle House. And, you know, too many people victimized senselessly, and as I mentioned, my middle school basketball coach was shot while preaching right down the road. And there's just something wrong when that's what's going on in our country and our community. And if we don't do something about it, shame on us, all of us.
Did you have any specific information leading you to believe that he might be threatened by other inmates, or he might be a threat, or is it just a precaution?
Yeah, it's a precaution that we take. There are many cases. I don't know if you remember the Jeffrey Dahmer case years ago. There's a lot of places where inside institutions, out of fear themselves, other inmates want to be comfortable and be without fear. And if they're fearing someone, we owe all that protection. And so I think as we go, highly publicized case, the inmates can watch TV, they see and read and hear, they know what's going on, and so we owe them that protection, and regardless, he'll be in a restricted housing unit the entire time, probably over a year.
What type of injuries is he being treated for? I saw in some of the video he had scratches on his arms.
Yeah, I don't know medically for sure. They, they took him to General Hospital. We have a full-time 24/7 medical staff here who will be in direct care. He'll be in their direct care. It's not unusual. I mean, we take people all hours of the night with all sorts of injuries, and he is, like I said, he's compliant with medical. He's working and doing as they've asked so far, so we think he'll be fine medically as we go.
What kind of family members reached out to the jail or tried to come visit?
We have not heard from them. The process for that's pretty complicated. What happens is he has to submit a list of people he wants to visit. We have to approve that list. Then it's loaded into the system, and then they would visit via video right up on the street, right up on the hill. That'll start probably within a week or so. Typically, he's got to be cleared medically and some other things before any visits. My understanding is he's not from here, and sometimes that reduces the number of people who are coming to see him.
This is going to sound random, but a few months back we did a story on you all giving iPads to inmates. Is he one of those inmates?
Yeah, not at this time, and that'll be determined later on as it relates to what he has access to.
What has his demeanor been like?
I think decent, which I think means not combative and not closed off. Some of the things that we worry about to protect him from himself, I think I think the word was used fairly normal.
Does he seem lucid, like he knows what's going on?
I think so. That's the way I understand it.
Sheriff, can you detail the mental health evaluation? What goes into that, and if a inmate wanted to be combative or not talk, can an inmate, how many links can they go to obstruct that evaluation?
That's a good question. One of the things that we do is a lot of this is self-reported information. Have you ever done this? Have you ever felt that? Have you ever been institutionalized? Have you ever threatened suicide? I've read enough about this gentleman from outside of the city that I think there's enough information that you can take from that. I haven't looked to see what he said on those questions, but the bottom line is there are enough triggers there that we will treat him as what you would consider to be a mental health case while here. I don't want to confuse that with the case, the criminal case, because that will be done at a totally different situation where they're evaluating his competency and so forth. And we're worried about how do we keep him stable while he's with us, and that evaluation has been done and will continue. I feel very confident that they have their hands on that. The tricky part becomes a legal argument going down the road as it relates to his status.
I'm sorry, so you said that is he checked on every 15 minutes, or is the length of time in which he's visiting with these medical professionals is 15 minutes? He's checked on every 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's just observed. We go by, check it, nose, eyes, ears. Are we talking? Can you see me? That type of thing throughout the day, 24 hours a day. It doesn't mean we're pulling you out and sitting down and talking to you. It just means we have eyes and nose on you. We know that you're okay at that moment. And that's documented, and that'll be going on. It can occur from other people, medical, mental health, both, but we have correctional officers who are observing that individual the entire time, I think, in the pictures. The goal there is to ensure that he doesn't have the opportunity to harm himself. That's what you're doing during this period. And when you take the clothing away and some of the other options, it still doesn't limit his chances to do some harm to himself.
Do you have one stationed right outside of his cell? Is there any type of special treatment in that, or is it just the normal walk up, walk down? Right,
and you try not to be predictable when you're coming, but no, there's no one sitting outside the cell staring at him 24/7, but it will be on a constant basis of folks going by. There are other inmates living in that unit. I don't know if you could get a sense for there are other doors. Those are all different, and potentially inmates in each one of those. So you're checking on other people, but you must go by his, and that's all well documented for what's going on with him. So, yes.
You mentioned that you want to protect him from other inmates. You want to protect him from himself. Sometimes those two worlds collide. You have an unstable inmate, a celebrity, right? Mm-hmm. And two, I don't know how many hours it's been outside, but presumably people that have to be able to shut stuff down. Mm-hmm. How worried are you that any interaction tip him over the edge?
Yeah, I mean, that's the complicated part of our job. We have to remove all of our emotions and protect him from all these things that most folks never think about. Taking him to court, the most dangerous thing we do is take someone who's high risk outside of a secure environment. We're really good at this. But when you move people into an environment that's not secure, our special operations team will handle that. But I promise you we won't tell you when we're moving him and where we're going and how we're getting there. But it's important that we don't allow him to interact with people for reasons of his own protection. And it's hard to do in an institution like this where you have thousands at times of movements and people going all sorts of directions.
Is he right now alone?
Yes.
And then, so he will, again, 72 hours of medical observation. He's currently alone, and then will be moved to a restricted area, which is even more secure?
It's more secure, but you don't live in this clothing and you have access to other items and you're living. There's a picture, I think we can give you the picture, but it's back to where you have your own bunk instead of sleeping what is basically a slab now. And so you have your own bunk and you have your own table set there, and of course your restroom and all that's right inside your own housing unit. So he will continue to be alone the entire time he's here, but he will live what you and I would call a traditional maximum custody inmate life after leaving medical observation.
Are there any differences between how he's being treated and how the Burnett Chapel shooting suspect was treated in that aftermath?
Are there any differences? I'm sorry. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. And I don't have it in front of me. Let me be real clear. It's a minimum of 72. We're going to listen to the mental health staff. If they believe they're still concerned, he may stay in medical observation for days on end. I don't think that'll happen unless they tell us to. But yeah, other than their direction, there's no difference.
Everything to eat? Would you want to eat?
Yeah, it's a good question too. One of the things that happens while he's in medical observation, so he can't use utensils and other things to harm himself and other people, is you basically are eating your food out of a bag. Those bags are finger food, as we call it, and you get the same nutritional amount that you need in other meals, but we can't give you sporks and other things that can be used. So while he's on medical observation, he's getting the same type of food in a different form, which are finger foods, and that's going on now, and he is eating.
What about that continues once he goes into the normal cell?
No, he'll go back to normal tray and normal eating like everybody else once we move him back to medical to restrictive housing.
Has he said anything that's left an impression with you? Anything that stands out?
I don't, and let me say this. I personally haven't been there. I've talked to my staff. I would say this. There are comparisons of another case right in the same facility, same building. And I think I would use the word a little more normal for this one compared to the Emanuel case as it relates to interaction. That's probably the word that's been used the most.
Seem remorseful in any way?
I haven't heard that word. Okay. Thank you all.
Again,